How would you like to come home to a bartender who will fix you any cocktail you want?
I'll have an old-fashioned.
I'll have a margarita.
Now you can with the Bartesian Home Cocktail Maker. Bartesian is a sleek machine the size of a coffee maker that makes premium cocktails at the touch of a button. Choose from over 50 different cocktails, from classics to the most exotic premium cocktails served in the best bars today. You'll always get freshly mixed, perfectly balanced cocktails with the Bartesian Cocktail Maker. And now get Bartesian's best Black Friday deal ever at bartesian.com/cocktail. Entertaining? The Bartesian is ideal for parties. No need to stock all kinds of individual mixers for complicated recipes. Every guest gets the cocktail of their choice in seconds. The Bartesian makes a wonderful gift for anyone who loves a fine premium cocktail. Now get Bartesian's best Black Friday deal ever. It's available right now, only at bartesian.com/cocktail. That's BARTESIAN.com/cocktail for Bartesian's best deal ever. Only at bartesian.com/cocktail.
Come unwrap some holiday magic this season in Denver, where the lights are brighter and the shopping is grander, where the season feels a whole lot more wonderful. Discover great hotels and more things to do at milehighholidays.com.
Hey, it's Your Financial Maven, Samantha Besnoff, CPA. And after almost 25 years in the accounting world, I've decided to share my insights and passion about money. Knowing your money and hopefully feeling less stress about your money is what I call being financially empowered. Welcome to the Your Financial Maven podcast. So today I actually have on with me another certified financial planner that takes a little bit of a different view on working with and talking with you about your money, focusing on financial wellness, especially for women. And I'm excited to introduce Candice McGarvey. You are a certified financial planner and a Willow financial life coach. Your professional path actually has led you through a variety of different areas, including investments and nonprofit management. And in 2013, Candice founded the Her Dollars Financial Coaching for Women to increase financial wellness in women. And in fact, this is kind of how I found out about Candice. It was through Her Traditions, which is through Traditions Bank. And I took a webinar back in November of 2022 talking about financial well-being and regarding your finances. It was a wonderful webinar. It really struck a chord. And I said, I have to have Candice on my podcast to talk about taking that holistic approach to financial wellness and well-being. So welcome, Candice McGarvey.
Thank you so much, Samantha. I'm glad to be here.
So let's get started. What is money?
Money is a resource, and it's the one that we often think about most. That's part of my work with clients, is really helping them get in touch with all of their resources and not feeling like money is the only one. It is important, yes, but there are other resources that are just as valuable. And I often meet with women, and it doesn't matter how much money they have. So many women come to me and say, I'm afraid that I am going to be homeless by the time I die and that I will outlive my money.
It's a very important thing to be a resource. Completely agree. Yeah.
And so what I try to remind people is that there is more than just money that is keeping you from being homeless. There's relationships, there's community, there's goodwill. And so to the extent that we can start building up all kinds of resources, including skills and passions, then I think we're wealthier than we were before. So going back to money, I would say it's just one of our resources, and it probably needs to be put in its place, because I think we focus on it so much that we feel like it's the only resource.
Yeah, I agree. And the National Financial Educators Council did a study or survey back in October to December talking to adults about financial illiteracy, not understanding your money and the fact that it costs them money. And I think they said it was around $1,800 each person. They did like 3,000 people in the survey, cost them money because they didn't understand money. And like you're saying, as a resource. So yeah, I didn't know that. And interesting.
And I would even point out that understanding money is a resource. Like that's just one more thing that you can control and you can build, because obviously it has value.
Right. I mean, that's the whole purpose of me getting out here and talking about it, is people understanding their money. So I really want to hear about how you got involved with not only being a certified financial planner, but the whole idea of this financial wellness and the resources and understanding all that.
Sure. Well, I started off in an investment boutique, and I really thought I would be helping people. And what I learned was that there's this whole investment world, and it is fascinating, but I didn't quite feel like I had any impact on clients' lives per se. So I sort of went out in search of something else that would maybe have more of an impact. And I found financial planning. So I got my CFP about a year before my first child was born. So I was still a newly minted CFP, and I'd passed the test and I knew everything I needed to know, except that nobody can teach you everything you need to know. And life has a habit of smacking you upside the head with things that you're not prepared for, regardless of how much preparation you've had. And so I had a chronically ill child, and it practically wrecked us financially.
And I can relate because my youngest, he's actually a senior in high school now. He suffers from a rare migraine disease and has since birth. So I agree with you that having a child or a situation that you're not expecting can really shift and change how you view things.
But even if I were expecting it, Samantha, it was so much worse. The hospital bills were so much worse than I had expected. And here's the thing. I think I had been told that because we have health insurance, we'll be fine. And so I had my nest eggs that were maxed to what they should have been. Thank heaven, I actually had a house that I had sold. And so I had extra assets to fall back on, because that is literally what kept us out of bankruptcy. And I know that not everybody has that.
Right, very true.
So I sat there wondering, if I have all of the training that I should have had and I still am in peril, what is going on with people who don't have that kind of training? So I was sitting across the conference room table from my financial planning clients and feeling like the wives, especially, they were sort of glossing over. And as they would leave our office, I did not feel like they felt any better about their finances at all. And it became a passion to try to figure out, what are we missing here? And so that is when I decided maybe there's something called financial coaching. I'd never heard those words put together. And I had colleagues who said, well, that's a dumb idea. You'll never make any money that way. And I had come to financial planning, early on. I recognized I was completely handicapped financially because of the emotional stuff. I knew what I was supposed to do, and I still could not help myself from storing the hospital bills until the pile was falling over, because my day was already wrecked. I couldn't take that. And that obviously caught up to us, because when you don't pay your bills, that's an issue. So I was already in financial planning in such an emotional state that, yes, maybe I saw my clients a little bit differently than my colleagues who were doing a good job. I studied life coaching and figured out where the similarities, what is the coaching model? And it was interesting. I had very little success for years. And I think part of it is that this whole financial coaching thing was new, and I didn't know anybody else who was doing it.
I mean, 20, 30 years ago, and you look at women in the 70s just finally being able to have a credit card in their own name without having a husband or a male figure in the family sign off on it. So it is, women need to feel more financially empowered. And how can we help them?
And women especially were not ready for it. It's not like you can understand, I'm a financial coach, here's what I'm going to do for you, the way you would maybe a therapist. You know what a therapist can do. This financial coaching thing is rather ethereal still. So we do find that there's a little bit of education involved before someone is even going to be interested in financial coaching. But the idea is that it is a supplement to regular financial planning. In fact, we have found the most success by partnering with other financial advisors and coming in as a member of their team. For one thing, 78% of our industry is male. So just having a woman on the team who can come in and sort of talk shop and say, hey, what's going on here? That really helps that relationship.
You have a website out there called herdollars.com. and you talk about helping women and with the financial coaching. But it was interesting because on your website, I came across the 5 money personalities. And my understanding is your 5 money personalities, and I think I have this right, is spender, avoider, amasser, hoarder, and monk. So
Yes.
different categories. And I guess looking at the money personality as a way to help you with your financial wellness. And I think, when I was reading through, it actually comes across with the Money Harmony from Olivia Mellon. And she's a professional speaker, author. She was a psychotherapist, money coach, business consultant, but she's talking about this Money Harmony. Can you talk to me a little bit more about the whole idea of money personalities and how that works with people and getting them to see money, like you said earlier, as a resource and beyond the fact that it's money?
Yeah. So Olivia Mellon is one of my mentors. She was a therapist who, when she began her practice, realized that she was helping people try to live their best life. And in the trunk of her car was a bunch of retail purchases that she was hiding from her husband. And she was like, there's something here financially that I need to get a hold of. And so she set out to become I think one of the country's first financial therapists, because she was on like Merv Griffin and Donahue.
Yeah, I think she was on the Today Show as well.
Yeah,
I've seen her,
right.
And everything.
And so as a financial therapist, one of the things she did was she came up with these money personalities. What's interesting is there's a lot of money personality tests out there, and they're usually about similar themed. But what I love about Olivia's model is that she argues you're going to be probably born, or maybe your environment will create a particularly dominant money personality. Almost everyone starts off that way. And what she found, especially as she was counseling couples, is that like 90% of couples marry their financial opposite, which seems a little crazy. I know I did it. And I was totally cognizant of the fact that I did it. And I think there is something to that dyad of marriage where you have some balance. It's like good cop, bad cop. Same thing happens with money. But if 2 spenders, for example, get married, what she found is that somebody polarizes, somebody changes to become an opposite. So as she was looking at that, what she recognized was that maybe we are better off if we acknowledge our sort of default personality. But what if we continue to develop the other 4 personalities, understand where they are strong and in which situations they will be most helpful? And then we can intentionally choose how to respond to whatever financial situation we're in. That's what she calls money harmony. And so everyone comes in with usually a dominant or 2 personalities. And then my work is usually to help them see the value of the other personality and figure out what situations would that be most helpful in.
Yeah, I think it's important when you know your money and you understand your situation, you can make choices. Whether in that moment they're right or wrong, you can still make that choice.
Exactly. You did the best you could with what you knew.
Absolutely.
And that's another thing that I find is completely unmotivated is regret.
Yeah.
There's just no good reason for it.
Yeah.
So a lot of women especially come to me with some shame around money. So a lot of financial wellness is just letting go and recognizing you did the best you could, that your parents did the best that they could, forgiving kind of everyone for the mistakes of the past, and then being more intentional.
Which is interesting because I was going to talk about this a little way down, but I'm actually going to shift a little. It's time for a money break.
The holidays start here at Baker's with a variety of options to celebrate traditions old and new. You could do a classic herb roasted turkey or spice it up and make turkey tacos. Serve up a go-to shrimp cocktail or use Simple Truth wild-caught shrimp for your first Cajun risotto. Make creamy mac and cheese or a spinach artichoke fondue from our selection of Murray's cheese. No matter how you shop, Baker's has all the freshest ingredients to embrace all your holiday traditions. Baker's, fresh for everyone.
Now, during the Jeep Black Friday sales event, get $12,500 in lease support on the 2023 Jeep Grand Cherokee Overland 4xE. $12,500 lease support includes cash allowances and $7,500 federal EV incentive provided by lender as a capitalized cost reduction and is subject to change without notice. Lessees cannot claim federal tax credit on their personal tax return. Please confirm this information to ensure its accuracy and availability. Consult a tax professional for details and eligibility. Not all lessees will qualify. Residency restrictions apply. Take delivery from dealer stock by 11/30. Jeep is a registered trademark.
Welcome back from our money break. So I came across an article. Now, granted, it was 10 years ago from Forbes magazine. It was called The Top 10 Money Fears and What to Do About Them. And one of the things that really struck my mind was talking about women not wanting to be a burden on their families, especially when it came to money. Now, I know that article's 10 years ago, and at the time they said 72% of women, but I would think that women feel that way still. And I don't necessarily think they should, because it's a misconception in my view that they're a burden. But I didn't know, like, as you talk about this, you come across this, like, what else you could mention about that?
Well, I think that's not just a fear. I think that's in our DNA as women. And I think you're right. It's a misconception of the concept. If you look at the rest of the world, pretty much, having multiple generations living in one space is common. It's the default. So there is something uniquely American, uniquely American and the West in general. There is this individualistic mindset versus the collective mindset. And it's fascinating to start looking at things, how many aspects of life that affects. But this is one of them, this idea that I have to be completely independent and that nobody is going to take care of me. I mean, we understand it's okay if you're within the same generation, like our spouse, we're okay with that. But to be a quote unquote burden to the kids, and this is part of what I was talking about earlier, this fear that women have about being homeless at the end of their life. Like, they're going to choose to be homeless rather than become, quote unquote, a burden. Just like you said, this is a mischaracterization of family. And I think when you look at the more collectively minded communities where there are multiple generations living in a home, I mean, the most sensible breakdown of labor around the house, like, it actually makes a lot of sense. So I think that our society is going to be moving towards that a little bit more, just based upon the price of housing. I think we're seeing it already with some of the younger generations not being able to, quote unquote, launch.
Well, and I think our younger generation, talk to like my son's friends, and just money to them and the stress of it. And the idea of that whole burden comes up with them too, because they don't want to be a burden to their parents, but they're still connected, or they don't want to be a burden on themselves to not be able to function, and just not having the financial knowledge or understanding. And how do they learn it? The whole generational thing. And I'm sure you could agree to this. I grew up watching and observing, but I am of the belief of talking to my boys about everything financial. They know how much we make. They understand the whole thing with the house and the mortgage. You have to have these discussions. It's so important.
And here's the thing. I love social media, and there's a ton of great resources there. But you also have to be really careful who you're listening to, because there are some predatory figures out there who are not here to help you increase your financial literacy. So it's just really important to have a critical mind as you are absorbing all of this information. And so certainly if your parents can teach it to you, who better to give you some of those basics? I understand there's going to be certain families where the generations don't mix. That's understandable. But also, I'm a big advocate of finding family somehow. Like, maybe your friends become your family. I just think that community is one of our greatest gifts. And it's one of the things that this individualistic mindset has sort of left by the wayside.
Yeah, I agree. And it's so interesting that when I was looking at this article that was from 10 years ago, I came across another article from Christopher Kakowski, and it's called The 5 Money Beliefs Holding You Back and Stifling Your Financial Growth. It was very interesting. And the 5 things that he talks about, he says, these 5 insidious money beliefs that could be holding you back, saying, 1, not having enough money to be successful. 2, to not have that money because it's causing stress and conflict in relationships. 3, I'm not good enough to make a lot of money. 4, having money means being greedy and selfish. And 5, there's not enough money to go around. And I find that interesting. We're talking about this whole community versus individualistic. And I think his article on a degree touches on that.
It does. And it also kind of sounds to me like the 5 personalities that Olivia Millen described. So it's interesting that the number comes down to 5. This isn't always that neat, but
right.
You're right. I mean, especially the idea that there isn't enough money to go around is incredibly disabling. I mean, it will paralyze you. And that combined with another one you mentioned, that I'll never make enough money. One of the exercises I do with clients early on usually is I ask them about their first childhood money memory.
Oh, that's a good one.
And it's so interesting to me because you could find out so much about the way they grew up. And a lot of times that feeds into whatever is their dominant money personality, just because those are sort of the beliefs that they started with. And those beliefs that we hold as children are firmly rooted. So I think a lot of it is from a money perspective. A lot of our work is trying to sort of find our way out of all of those tropes that we might have heard as kids, and then recognizing what beliefs are going to serve me now. What I need to have is maybe a more balanced opinion of people who have money. And you can sort of go through that exercise with all of these early held beliefs. And we see this in generations, this pendulum effect, where a lot of times the grandchildren and the grandparents are more alike than the generation in between. And that is the case with all kinds of things.
The other thing I came across actually on your Her Dollars website, which I thought was very interesting, was talking about budgets and that not needing a budget. And here's something interesting. So my very first episode is actually talking about budgeting, but I talk about it from a very simplistic standpoint. And I think at the end of your blog, you mentioned it being more of a spending plan. What I talked about were 3 things: was what money's coming in, what money is going out, and the money you have left, what are you going to do with it? Save it, spend it, whatever. And looking at your money that's going out to see where can you help yourself adjust. And I say, to me, budgets for personal, individual are more flexible, kind of what your life is. Not set in stone, but stricter, I guess. So I just thought it was interesting that you say you don't need a budget. I think it's more about a spending plan. And so I guess I look at them as the same thing, but I'm curious, what your thought process when you talked about that was.
I think there's just a little bit more than semantics involved here with budget versus spending plan, partly because of our mindset and the way a spending plan sets you up for a mindset that is not so fixed. So a lot of times I have women coming in saying, I can't budget, I'm terrible at it. So I say, all right, well then let's create a spending plan, which is really just the same exercise, but you're focusing on what you are spending money on. The other thing that I really like to do, regardless of whether it's a budget or a spending plan or whatever word we're using, is try to automate as many fixed expenses as possible, or fixed payments, partly because I am a woman with children and a house and all kinds of things. And so the last thing I need to be using my precious decision-making capabilities on are whether or not I pay this bill right now. So as many things as we can put on auto pay and sort of remove our decision-making requirement from that, I'm a big fan of.
But I would say that you still need to check in on that occasionally. Absolutely. To make sure from a cash flow perspective, pay that bill. So yeah, I do agree.
Absolutely. You can't abandon it. You've got to go back. For one thing, you're not going to be able to pay everything auto pay. But if we can just reduce the number of bills that you have to actually make the decision, I'm going to pay this now, that is helpful. And the other thing is you really need, and I'm aging myself, I like to call it money time, kind of in the same way that you would say hammer time.
I'm the same age group, so I know, hammer time.
Yeah. So to me, having money time, if I can associate that with something that is positive, I'm going to check in, I'm going to see where there may be inefficiencies that I can fix. There's all kinds of things. You still have to be engaged. All I'm saying is to give as much of your decision-making power to the decisions that are going to make a difference, because whether or not this fixed bill gets paid, I mean, it has to happen. So all of that is to say that when I am talking to someone about a spending plan, I'm trying to focus on, we know the rough amount of what you're going to spend on this in a given month. So rather than looking at it as a budgeting and a restrictive exercise, you're looking at it more as something that is proactive with ideas that are not written in stone. So if you have a variable income, for example, you're going to have to adjust all of those. So it's a little less rigid. And I find that using that vernacular sets people up for a different mindset.
Yeah, I mean, that's very interesting. I learned something new about that whole vernacular. And I think, that was what I was trying to say in my first episode about this is something that is flexible and adjusts to what your needs are. And I talked about just getting to know and understanding your money gives you the ability to be financially empowered, to make choices that are what you need at that time. And also to give yourself grace because we don't always make the right decisions.
Yeah. And everything is around the idea of being more intentional.
Yeah. I love that. I just think the whole idea of wellness and being holistic is being more intentional about everything that you do. And it's hard. I agree. I try to be more intentional, but doesn't always work for me. So in that article that I just talked about with the 5 money beliefs holding you back, the author actually quoted the late Maya Angelou. And this is what he quoted her by saying, "You can only become truly accomplished at something you love. Don't make money your goal. Instead, pursue the things you love doing and then do them so well that people can't take their eyes off of you." It's true what she says about that.
Yeah. I mean, again, if you focus on money as the resource, and there's a lot of us that do just because that's how we were brought up or just because of what society tells us, whatever, that is not necessarily going to lead to any sort of money-making results. And along the way, I'm a whole lot happier focusing on all of my resources.
Yeah, I agree.
Where my wealth is than if I'm just focused on the one.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So we've talked about some great things today. And is there any other final thoughts or insights you'd like to share just to talk about the financial well-being, money as a resource? Anything else you'd like to let my listeners know about?
Sure. One idea that I have not seen take root, but I keep coming back to is, again, I'm looking at a lot of women in these end of life situations, mostly because when I'm financial coaching with Willow, we have a lot of divorcees and widows that are coming in, and find that with my girlfriends, statistically, we women will most likely end up in charge of our own finances on our own because all the data points to that as a likelihood. And I started creating this idea with my girlfriends, like we're going to have a compound.
I love it. That's my girlfriends and I talk about it too, having a compound.
And I think it can look like whatever we want it to look like. I think that we can create some efficiencies there. And it's funny because I have different compounds with different friends in different parts of the world.
Right. I do too.
There's all sorts of options there. But I think there's something really beautiful about recognizing friendships with women and understanding the automatic community that can provide. And it makes the horror of those losses a little bit easier to deal with. So as I look at our economy and everything that is happening, I just feel like that model, understandably, there will be others who move in with the next generation.
Of course.
I think there's going to be a lot of people living together as opposed to each older person having their own, apartment.
Yeah. I think it would be great. We joke about buying an island, just, going somewhere and just being away from everybody and just having our own little cohort. Well, thank you so much for taking the time and coming and chatting with me. And I'd love to have you back and maybe we can delve into a particular area even more with regards to this. And I appreciate you taking the time, Candice.
You are so welcome. It's been so fun.
I want to hear from you. Do you have questions about money? Would you like to share your money stories with me, like a time when you felt really stressed about money? Visit www.yourfinancialmavenpodcast.com and leave me anything you want to tell me about money. The purpose of this podcast is to provide general information on the subjects discussed. It is for educational, informational, and entertainment purposes only. You should consult your CPA, accountant, or tax professional for all of your specific financial needs or situations. Credits. Producer, Your Financial Maven, LLC, and Samantha M. Besnoff, CPA. Music, composition, writing, and recording by my amazing cousin, Dan Shore. Podcast editing by Kris Zarnoch of KMZen Creative. A special thank you to the Seneca Women Podcast Network and iHeartRadio, and to P&G and MasterCard for creating and sponsoring the inaugural class of the Seneca Women Podcast Academy. A special thank you to my mentor, Katrina Norvell, for guiding and giving me the confidence that I needed when I didn't think I could do this. A special thank you to all of the women who are also a part of the Seneca Women Podcast Academy. You are some of the most amazing, brilliant, bright women that I know, and I am so blessed to be a part of this group with you. I am so excited for all of your podcasts and where things will go for all of us. And a very special thank you to all of my family and my friends. You know who you are. Without your love and support for me and my life-changing aspirations, I would not be where I am today. Thank you. Your Financial Maven is a production of the Seneca Women Podcast Network and iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, check out the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.
Lucky Land Casino, asking people, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
Lucky? In line at the deli, I guess?
Aha, in my dentist's office. More than once, actually.
Do I have to say?
Yes, you do.
In the car before my kids' PTA meeting.
Really?
Yes.
Excuse me, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
I never win and tell.
Well, there you have it. You can get lucky anywhere, playing at LuckyLandSlots.com. Play for free right now. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Judy was boring.
Hello.
Then Judy discovered ChumbaCasino.com.
It's my little escape.
Now Judy's the life of the party.
Oh, baby, mama's bringing home the bacon.
Whoa, take it easy, Judy. The Chumba life is for everybody. So go to ChumbaCasino.com and play over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply. See website for details.